This is Lue Elizondo, and you are listening to That UFO Podcast.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to That UFO Podcast. My name is Andy, and we've got some breaking news that happened, a few days ago as we record this. Joining me, of course, for this one is Dan. Hi.
Howdy, howdy. How are you?
Yep, not bad. We've been talking for half an hour. Let's dispense with the pleasantries. We said this will be a quicker one than normal. It feels like we've not recorded much in a while. People won't really have noticed that because the stuff's still been coming out regularly, but managed to get a bit ahead in terms of interviews and schedules and everything else. I've been working a lot, Dan's been working a lot, and Dan is about to move, as you may have saw online. So it's been best that the way we've done it, and we've finally got a chance to at least record this one. Dan moves over the weekend, and then we're all good for a regular schedule again. But I don't think people should have noticed any difference anyway. No, to be fair,
it was a smooth transition. But my wall will be changing soon, so people will notice that probably.
Well, that's the
unless
big
they're on audio.
Yeah, in which case it doesn't matter because
it doesn't matter now.
Dan's audio wall will be changing. Hopefully his audio doesn't. Unless you hate his audio, then it may change for the better.
Yeah, let us know.
But yeah, on the 20th of July, it was announced online from the Department of Defense that on the 15th of July, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks, in coordination with the Director of National Intelligence, amended her original direction to the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security by renaming and expanding the scope of the AOIMSG, which, as we know, was the Airborne Object Identification and Management Group, to a new office titled AARO, which was the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. And for Jazz Shaw, the hyphen does negate the D being part of that acronym, yeah. Dan, it does. Even I knew that one. Jazz, shame on you. So the AARO. So the AOIMSG is gone, and we have AARO, AARO. And this is due to the enactment of the National Defence Authorisation Act, the NDAA, for fiscal year 2022, which we've just had the new language amendments for, which we covered recently on the podcast as well, which included a provision to establish an office in coordination with the DNI with responsibilities that were broader than those originally assigned to the AOI-MSG. That was the initial statement on the DoD's website, Dan. So in short, AOI-MSG, no longer a thing. We get rid of that huge acronym. We have this new office, the AARO. What were your initial thoughts when you saw this drop?
My immediate thought is that the word arrow is a hell of a lot better to say than AIMSG.
100%.
I think everyone can agree. It's nice that now I know we're talking about it, so it's a little ironic for me to say, but it's nice that when we say, oh yeah, America has a UAP office, it's AARO, people won't go, what the hell is that word? There won't be so much conversation about the naming of the office, which is good. We can focus on the content and what they're doing now. There was a phrase that came along with this legislation, which had another hyphen in it, which was unidentified. Oh, I'm going to mess this up now. I'm going to forget it. Undersea.
Mm-hmm.
I've forgotten the second U. Darn. But basically, it's the new phrasing for UAP, which includes a term that is not just saying transmedium. It denotes that it goes through multiple domains. So go on.
People are getting too caught up, I think. And I get it's the detail, okay? But all the different acronyms that people are coming out with online, whenever they see a new piece of legislation or some language being put in, I think a lot of these are just covering the bases of what is being seen. Ultimately, folks, like I've said before, and you can like this, you can hate it, or you can be nonplussed, UFO covers all of these still. It's just language that people may or may not find stigmatized. We then kind of got used to UAP, and I think people are just getting a little bit too excited whenever they see USAP or UUSAP, and it's like it's all still the same thing.
Yeah, and UAP has been going since what the earliest mention we found, I think, was 47.
Yeah, Graham Rendell's
and it hasn't replaced UFOs.
Graham Rendell puts the documents in our chat, Dan, doesn't he? And says, look,
absolutely.
It says UAP here back in the 40s and 50s, and it just wasn't as common, especially in the public domain.
Yeah, absolutely. And it hasn't replaced UFO despite being around for 50 to 70 years. So I don't think it's going to replace UFO. The public calls them UFOs. Officials call them UAP. I would say that's the line.
Yeah, 100%. I use the WWF, WWE. You know, WWE's been around now since 2002.
Oh, sure.
But to the general public who don't watch wrestling, it's the WWF. And
Yeah.
that's still the wrestling to them. So it's that kind of thing. AARO itself, so AARO, remember folks, its mission, according to the statement online, the mission of AARO will be to synchronize efforts across the Department of Defense and with other US federal departments and agencies to detect, identify, and attribute objects of interest in, on, or near military installations, operating areas, training areas, special use airspace, and other areas of interest, and, as necessary, to mitigate any associated threats of safety or to safety of operations and national security. This includes anomalous, unidentified space, airborne, submerged, and transmedium objects. So they really are covering the bases there now of not just things flying about in the air, but things that can go underwater, can go in space, and again, transmedium doing some or all of the above, and
Yeah.
potentially, as we've discussed a long time ago previously, Dan, going through physical objects could technically now be part of that as well.
Well, this was the reason I was happy with the all domain being in the AARO acronym. The phrasing that I kind of forgot earlier was unidentified aerospace dash undersea phenomena. So to me, that includes, space, air, and undersea. But there are more mediums in the universe than those three things. So it makes sense to cover those bases by just saying all domain. In the language, it even says unknown domains. So it's giving room for, places and things that we just don't know exist yet. They're expanding that scope to really drive home the fact that they're looking at anomalous craft that don't fit under the remit of things like drones, even though that might be a part of the conversation.
With the idea ultimately still being this organisation, the same as the one before it, and the same as the task force, the same as any other that would be around that we've heard of or not heard of, we still want to find out what these objects are, what the origin is. So yeah, it's great. We can keep covering more and more things that they may or may not do, but ultimately we don't want that to detract from what it does.
Yeah,
And from what are they? That's the ultimate question.
100%. And we've spoken about this a lot as well. Like we both of us don't think that there's only one thing here. We think that there are multiple things happening, multiple phenomena. Some of them might be natural, some of them might be, visited from other planets, some of them might be something else as well. So as we go forward, we will start labeling these things and narrowing them down. The giant squid isn't going to call a monster at the edge of the map forever. It's now a giant squid, and science studies it. Eventually, we will have a name for, it won't be a tic tac. It'll be probably named after the species that made it, possibly, if that's what it is.
So let me ask you, Dan. This replaces the AOIMSG, AIMSOG, whatever people want to call it, or whatever that was. It's now gone. What did AIMSOG actually do, or did it actually do anything wrong? Because it doesn't seem like it was about all too long to get any actual work done before it's disappeared.
Yeah, absolutely. So about the only thing we saw AIMSOG do was take over everything that the UAP task force had, start going through that, and then also brief Moultrie and Bray for the hearing that we saw. And we saw how ill-equipped they were. So I remember when AOIMSG was announced, and we all thought that they were trying to the DoD was trying to distract from the Gillibrand-Rubio amendment, because that was a really extensive piece of legislation. And if the Office for UAP Study had been defined by that legislation, it would have been a lot broader and a lot more far-reaching than AIMSOG ended up being. So I feel confident saying that AIMSOG was exactly what we feared it was. It was just something to try and appease the senators and to make them back off, as opposed to something that was actually a robust office meant to investigate these things thoroughly. Whereas this new office, looking at the new legislation as well, even though it's just a rebrand, the person that they've brought in, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who we'll speak about in a minute, like he's not someone that messes around, and I think that reflects this newer office's attitude.
So do you think the rebranding, which essentially is what this largely is all because of what's happened in the time from it being set up to just before this, essentially those hearings and the performance of Moultrie and Bray and the kind of lack of confidence that people seem to have in government with this office? Do you think that's prompted this rethink, restructure, and then rebrand?
Yeah, I 100% think that. Unfortunately, it's still under the OUSDI, which is the Office for Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security,
And that
which
is
isn't
still Ronald
really.
S. Moultrie, who is the Under Sec Def for Intel and
Yes,
Security, as I'm getting used
that
to
is
that.
correct. I always forget those. There are so many terms here, right? Like we talk
And they're
about these
so
things all the
close and
time.
so
Yeah.
similar. Yeah.
But yeah, it certainly seems that it's a step in the right direction, and that it's addressing a lot of the criticism that was levied at AIMSOG and before that the UAPTF. Now it's becoming more of a, well, like I say, a more of a robust office. And I'm sure there are gaps in this legislation that will be filled in next year and the year after that and the year after that as we move forward. This isn't perfect by any means, but it's definitely a step forward and a step up from AIMSOG.
And is it also a little bit of a PR move?
Probably. I
Right.
mean, it rebranding washes off the bad taste, and we've seen countless companies do it throughout history. And after those hearings, I imagine they want AIMSOG as far away as possible, as a name, as a term, from the next hearings, where hopefully it will be a much better offering. I think the first time we'll get to judge it is come this Halloween, when we see the second UAP unclassified report. We'll be
Mm-hmm.
able to compare and contrast with the one we had before and see, okay, really, what is this? Have they just done the same thing again? Then we know that Travis Taylor helped prepare that report now,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of stuff would have been taken out of it. So we will now be able to see, okay, how is the declassification process kind of shaking up? Are officials pushing for more information in there because they don't think it should be classified? And looking at other details that are included, it will be very telling of Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and his team.
Well, people can follow on social media the AARO department at DOD_AARO. And the first announcement from that Twitter account was, welcome to the official Twitter account for the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Through this channel, we will provide updates and information relative to our examinations of unidentified anomalous phenomena across space, air, and maritime domains. As we grow the office, begin building upon the previous Department of Defense efforts in this area, and communicate with Congress, we will provide updates on our progress here. This is an exciting and intellectually stimulating opportunity for us here at AARO. Ronald S. Moultrie, who we mentioned before, Dan, he then followed it up with, on July 20th, I informed the DoD that of the establishment of the AARO within the OUSDI, and named Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, most recently the Chief Scientist at Defence Intel's Missile and Space Intelligence Centre, as Director. Dr. Kirkpatrick and I have a very productive discussion, or had a very productive discussion with Senator Gillibrand and her staff yesterday afternoon regarding the DoD AARO, and look forward to continuing our work on this important effort. So, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, a name that people may have heard dropped in past in various different ways, shapes, and forms. What did you already know, Dan, about Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick?
So I was very excited to hear this name because, and I'm going to have to keep the gentleman's name out of it, just because it turns out that I know somebody that knows Sean and has worked with him in the past.
Warning,
And
folks, Dan's about to cite an anonymous source.
I mean,
Warning,
I've
warning.
done it. Um, I was fortunate to meet this gentleman in Colombia as part of phenomenology. We had great conversations about what he did. I'm not at liberty to share that because he is an active employee, but I will say that it was a glowing review of Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. He spoke about him as Dr. K. That's what his friends call him. Dr. K apparently is the guy that you want on this. He's the go-to gentleman in terms of, and they say it in on the announcement, they linked to a kind of a summary of his past, and there was a phrase in there that I'd heard before, which was that he basically served in a variety of no-fail roles, which is as heavy as it sounds. He's the guy you bring in to sort things out. He's the guy you bring in to get the job done. So in spite of the Air Force being involved in Sean's past, I would say try and put that aside, because this is the guy that you want on the job, in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, the Air Force don't have on their application forms, do you have an interest in UFOs, which then will exclude you from a role. There's going to be folks at the Air Force who do have an interest in the subject.
Absolutely. Similar to NASA, right? We
Yeah,
spoke about this often, like the government is a big thing, and not everybody in it is going to be read into these programs where they can't talk about things. So there are genuinely people outside of it that have interest, and I think that tweet reflected that.
A really interesting place, I think, especially in the growing world of social media, to find out information on folks, legitimate information, is LinkedIn. And if you jump onto Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick's LinkedIn profile, you find out this little blurb about him, which I thought was quite interesting as a quite succinct summary of his background. So Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick is an executive level physicist and intelligence officer with extensive experience in research and development, systems engineering, acquisition, oversight, operations, and policy. He brings unconventional thinking through a diverse background to solve some of the nation's most complex and challenging problems. Pretty interesting line.
Yep.
Demonstrated ability for executive-led cradle-to-grave strategy development, implementation, and execution. As a recognised national subject matter expert, widely sought by national level political and military leadership for advice and recommendations on space and counterspace and scientific and technical intelligence issues, he combines extensive technical and engineering depth with strategy and policy in space control, space operations, and cutting-edge science and technology. He's a change agent with deep experience in startup organizations and major organizational and management realignments. Now, so much of that profile fits into exactly what he's coming into here and reads positively, like you say, for what he can potentially do and bring to this role, because this doesn't sound like a guy who comes into a role and it doesn't go anywhere. That's not the reputation, and that's not his CV, is it?
No, I would say that if someone's bringing him in for that, to kind of brush this under the carpet, they're probably going to end up finding that they've hired a person who will hold them to account and will not do that. Whether we see the results of all of that work remains to be seen, because there's a lot of classified stuff here. But Dr. Kirkpatrick is tremendously qualified for this position, and it certainly seems like he has an interest in just things that other people can't figure out anyway.
Do you think that Dr. K, as his friends call him, we'll assume we're his friends, he might listen, you never know, and also the AARO will succeed in picking up where the previous efforts have left off?
I think so. I can imagine someone like Dr. Kirkpatrick going in and asking to see where these kind of bits of data are held and so on and so forth. And if AIMSG were as illegitimate as we think they are, then all of those things would have been sorted out, basically. All of the data stores would have been shored up. Everything will have its place. I can't imagine John taking no for an answer when he's asking for materials from places that are maybe not cooperating. There was a really great line in Kathleen Hicks's memo announcing this. She's the director of national intelligence, and she said that any DoD component acting on behalf of the UAPTF or who has data analysis contracts and other material related to UAP will immediately synchronize their efforts with the AARO, which I thought was very telling. That either alludes to her just talking about the AIMSG, or Kathleen Hicks is being very particular with her language in that she possibly suspects that there are some other components within the DoD that don't fall under the remit of the UAPTF or AIMSG that might be studying this.
Let me ask though, and correct me where or if I'm getting this wrong, which is likely, that during the UAP task force summary being compiled, we found out they had a change of leadership. And
Yes.
You remember at the time, people like Lue Elizondo, Chris Mellon, and others were saying that it was already being set up to fail. And the change of leadership in the middle of that meant it really should have been extended, and everything was going to be rushed, and they were being hamstrung and everything else. You're saying that in 3 months' time we have that next unclassified report due. Is this not potentially something similar, where all this change is a disruption to an ongoing process? And how can Dr. Kirkpatrick in 3 months get things together, get everything compiled and ready to put out some kind of report? Or should we not expect very much and be looking forward already to next year?
So the first thing I would say is that Dr. Kirkpatrick, this was announced a while back unofficially. We had D. Dean Johnson telling us that this had happened, that he'd heard this has happened. So I imagine Dr. Kirkpatrick has been working for a while on everything. as opposed to since July 15th. That said, you are completely right. That's a really disruptive thing to happen. A change of leadership, a change of remit, a change of scope. So it's quite possible that this first report includes a kind of almost a reset, that we're going to kind of see Dr. Kirkpatrick's version of last year's report and have the bits pointed out that are ineffective, basically. Because now we have someone there that's going to be looking at the office and looking at what he can improve process-wise. And we already know that we have the new legislation coming in for the classified stuff and the immunity language, but that will not factor into this report because that won't be passed by the time we get that report, basically. So at the very least, I would expect something similar to what we had, but I'm expecting for a little more transparency in there.
Sure. And again, we see this as the change on the surface, but we don't know the ripples underneath as to what the
100%.
knock-on effect is if Dr. Kirkpatrick brings on advisor A, B, and C to help out and get rid of D, E, and F who were there already, or if there are any changes and it's kind of seamless. So that's something that will just remain to be seen. And I wonder how can the language changes in the upcoming NDAA, which people have been reporting on, that's to help bring other agencies together, help with the data collection. One of the big focuses has been the language, and I'm going to paraphrase, around essentially finding out, have we collected, I say we, as in government agencies, the US, etc.
I thought you meant you and I.
Yeah, have
Just
we?
me and you
Because
on the
we
back of a
have,
pickup truck.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah, not yet. We still have to get the pickup truck. But have any of these agencies within the US government found crashed materials, crashed craft, whatever they may be, and given them to the private sector? Because that was something that we've talked about before. You know, it's easy to give that. Let's just, for talking sake, use Roswell and say, yeah, we don't have that. Well, maybe they don't because it was given away a long time ago to Lockheed, Boeing, you know, somewhere else. And that's where some of these language changes are coming in. Is that right, Dan? And also, how effective can that actually be? Because surely there are still ways and means to keep these things secret.
Yeah, you're not wrong. The language that's currently going through the House is referring to, I'll just do like a little brief summary for people that maybe
Yeah.
haven't seen the last episode. It's referring to creating a system within the DoD that would be able to, or would be secure enough to have classified reports submitted. So if someone was working in a special access program where maybe they had access to this materials, they could submit their report through that system and it would be considered secure. It would get to the right people, i.e. the senators who are writing this language. There is no kind of stick in this legislation. There's nothing kind of saying to people, look, if you don't come forward, we're gonna throw you in jail for 50 years. All there is essentially an offer of a handshake and to say, you know, come in, give us your information, and we'll go from there. There is no promise that they will be forgiven for past crimes or anything like that.
Yeah.
All the legislation is designed to do, like I say, is to take the classified information and be secure and get it to the officials that need it. Another bit in the NDAA that kind of went under people's radars is to do with the National Archives taking over the declassification process. And then right at the end of all the UAP stuff, they slip in that they want everything that the National Archives has on UAP. So you can kind of see those two puzzle pieces slotting together, that if an independent body has control of declassifying materials, and then the UAP task force, or sorry, AARO, plugs directly into that, that's going to be extremely beneficial to the conversation, because we can just start, you know, we have someone there that isn't going to look at a bit of footage from the gun camera and just go, oh, we can't show anyone that because it's a sensitive bit of technology.
Mm-hmm.
It will be their job to kind of go, okay, what can we maybe crop out of this video, and we can still show them the interesting part that doesn't give away our advantage to our adversaries. So yeah, that's the one bit. Then the other bit, and this was kind of expanded on in the IAA this week. There's so many different acronyms. That's the Intelligence Authorization Act. The number is HR 8367, if anyone wants to go look it up. But basically, that is a bit of language that, when it comes to the person is called the comptroller of the United States, essentially. That person and department is being directed to create a report of that's essentially the complete history of the American intelligence community's dealings with UAP, and to start from January 1947. That was in the NDAA, but in the IAA, they expanded it to very specifically say efforts to recover or translate related technologies to United States-based industry or national laboratories. So what we're seeing is the senators, as we're going forward and they're getting a little bit more bits of information, we're seeing them add these terms to the language to kind of block out these loopholes. And almost, I think, to kind of say, hey, anyone that's worked at a national laboratory, we've got eyes on you. So if this is you, you better come forward now before we have to have the next conversation, which, like I say, no one's having yet. This is all carrot and no stick. So I'm hoping that by pointing these people out and these places out that the UFO community has been speaking about for decades and decades now, that those people start coming forward and start speaking. Hopefully folk like Eric Davis will use the new reporting mechanisms because he still has clearance, so he can't speak about it openly, even though he gets real close to that line. And that must be a really interesting conversation with his bosses at EarthTech. But folk like him, people like Lazar, I don't think will testify, just because
I can't see that.
No political aide is going to go to their boss and be like, hey, Marco Rubio, we should get Bob Lazar, and he's going to say, who's Bob Lazar, and then look at his rap sheet and kind of go, yeah, we shouldn't put that guy in front of television and stuff like that. There are some dodgy things in the past, right?
And also the whole character and story and circus that can surround a Bob Lazar and others like that with those types of stories. Even, for example, someone I get asked regularly to bring on is Gary McKinnon, who famously, I'll use allegedly, even though we know what happened, just for law reasons, legal reasons, hacked the NASA systems. And hacked, like in Jurassic Park, when the girl hacks it.
Just hitting the keyboard without really looking.
That's it, old school hacking. But Gary apparently saw lots of different things, including proof that there were alien civilizations and whatnot, and there's been all kinds of things over the years. But is it the time to bring those types of people to a stand? No. And I think in a way it's like when I talk about experiencers feeling left out, it's still not the time to bring up, so what about abductions? What's happening with those? That's down the line in the conversation. We have to get...
and no one should be offended by that, I don't think. It's kind of like introducing, if someone said to me, what's Marvel about? What are those films about? I'm not going to start talking about the particular mix of elements in Iron Man suits, right? I'm going to keep the conversation light and kind of go baby steps and maybe let them kind of immerse themselves in it before we have those heavier conversations. So that's all this is we're kind of laying the groundwork to have those deeper conversations down the line.
Yeah, you don't tell someone you love them on the first date because likely that's not going to go well. Dan has. But yeah, you build that up, don't you? And that's for down the line when things get more serious, that you've got to lay the groundwork and, tread lightly in the early days. And I think that's really what's got to happen here. So overall, Dan, just before we finish off with some listener thoughts, a positive step for you?
Yeah, I would say 8 arrows out of 10 on that news. I was very happy to read it and to have that, beautiful new acronym that actually forms a word that people can say.
I can't go as high as 8 out of 10, but I will go 4 out of 5. I think that's more than fair.
You're going to have listeners yelling at you again. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I've got the A, I've got the R, the O, just missing off the W at the end, and I still know that spells it wrongly, folks, just before anyone kicks off. Listener thoughts, Graham Rendell at Borders 750. You'll know Graham well, folks. Yeah, well, except Dan. Yeah, you should follow Graham, of course. He's got numerous new books out, and I'm behind on interviewing Graham about his books, but go check those out. He said if only the MOD in the UK would make a similar announcement about the creation of a British equivalent. Oh look, a pig has just flown past my window. And he said, I'm hopeful for more progress, but equally realistic in thinking we'll probably be the last to know if anything is discovered. Davey said, as I said to Dan earlier, this is on Twitter, folks, he's happy with the new name. I am super pleased by Dr. K being part of it, but I'm still wary of the overarching department that oversees the office. Stephen asked the question, Dan, do you think the immunity language in the amendment is sufficient or has real teeth to enable those with NDAs to speak if they choose? We mentioned Eric Davis and others before. Is there some subtle wordplay that has escaped this layman that will give the powers that be an avenue to scupper and strangle such attempts?
So I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that just because my cable died halfway between.
That's fine, folks. And this is a short episode, so we can leave it in. So if you want to skip 10 seconds, I'll repeat the question.
It's a whole new version of I was on mute.
Yeah, I'll read it in my posh voice.
Okay.
Dan, Stephen asks, do you think the immunity language in the amendment is sufficient or has real teeth to enable those with NDAs to speak if they choose? So you mentioned like Eric Davis and such before. Is the language in the bill going to allow these people to come forward, which is something that people have been clamouring for now?
I think the key thing to remember is that it will allow people who were already willing to come forward. There's obviously been conversations in back rooms, in SCIFs, secure facilities, where they can talk about these things. And I think this is designed to let some people that officials are already aware of come forward and be able to speak.
Can I ask a really, I think, basic question? I'm going to ask it really badly, but this is for an idiot like myself, who I think there'll be other idiots like me out there who want this basically as a yes or a no, and that's all you can give is yes or no. Can Lue Elizondo, and in a hypothetical scenario, he knows that there are, for a fact, alien civilizations visiting and or on this planet because of a reason, can he, if he is given or granted immunity from his NDA, can he literally stand in public, in Congress, and tell us everything he knows?
No.
Okay.
So this would not let Lue do that, but it would let him do that to officials in a SCIF. So when they said, "Oh, we're going to close the hearing now," that little bit of the hearing that we didn't get to see.
Yeah.
Lue could now go into there and say everything he knows without fear of prosecution, but not publicly.
Okay, sure. Chuck says, and this one's a little bit of a somber one from Chuck. As the US crumbles quickly and exponentially before our very eyes, I think the cat might have to be let out of the bag once they get desperate enough, because all they have left is a crumbling, divided middle class, rich people, and a massive military budget to keep the rich rich. Chuck, to be fair, I think there are many of us throughout the world who would say our countries are crumbling before our very eyes, but chin up. It could be worse,
Yeah.
Fuel prices in the UK just dropped a couple of pence, so woohoo.
And our ground is literally melting and cracking. I think it was Luton where planes couldn't take off because the tarmac was all goopy.
The good news is, because of the crash in fuel prices, Dan, I fed my kids today, so fantastic news.
Ooh, I bet they were stoked.
First time in a week. Alex says, I was reading about the director, Sean Kirkpatrick. Really surprised they announced who he was. His background is pretty crazy. And yeah, as we said, Alex went into that in a little bit of detail. He seems extremely well qualified and similar to a Travis Taylor. While Dr. Kirkpatrick hasn't appeared on numerous TV shows as part of the History Channel network, his CV and resume, and even on there some of his recommendations from colleagues, speak for themselves. Some free plugs and advertising here for Demon House Design. Dan, I know you know them well. They said, looking forward to hearing it. Do you think that access to files pre-1947 will be used as an excuse to buy further time stalling, or is this where disclosure will come from? I don't think the stuff from way back, just for my own view, Dan, is going to be the things that, put it this way, folks, we're not bringing up Roswell here and getting confirmation. No one's dragging out the flying saucers. I don't think that's what's going to happen here.
It's possible that Roswell gets included in the comptroller's report, though, since that starts in January 47. But the focus isn't going to be on things like Roswell. The focus is going to be on sightings or events that have multiple sensor systems. So not just a pilot with their eyes, it's going to be their WSO, there's another pilot and their WISO, plus the high-tech fancy radars that they have, plus the Hawkeye radar that they have, plus the other ship that was there. These anomalous events with multiple vantage points are going to take precedence, and that's pretty much the whole reason that we see such a focus on 2004 and the Tic Tac, because that's kind of the first one where we have all that.
And not to bang on, and I've said this before, Dan, myself, but Roswell's a very romantic story, and it's 75 years plus now since Roswell. It's a little bit, to me, because so much has happened, almost everyone involved has passed on. We've mentioned before, many of the grandchildren of those involved have passed on or are very elderly. Would it not be similar to saying to you, Dan, I've baked a cake, here's a list of 20 ingredients. I've put them together in a bowl. It's been baked. It's been presented. There it is. Can you go and get me the sugar back out the cake? And that's a little bit like sending people back to find as if Roswell, oh, there's the Roswell file. There it is there. And here's the hangar with all the stuff. It's probably long removed from that. With, say there even was a recovered vehicle or technology, it could be all over the place in various different places. It could almost be unrecognizable, to what it was then or where it was, and been passed hands so many times in private industry as well that it would be really hard to go and find that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd end up with, say you had a big sheet of material and you started giving chunks of it out to people to kind of study, and they all had NDAs, they were all secure, but, I was giving this material out. At some point, one of them's probably going to go walkies, or it's going to get cut into two to pass out to someone else. So the longer since the event happened, the more kind of stovepiped all of that information is going to be. And sure, we can connect these stovepipes going forward with something like AARO, but going back and connecting things with stovepipes, that's really, really difficult. So there might be some stories in UFO lore that we kind of almost have to let go of because they're just not good enough to have that part of the conversation,
Yeah. Where do you think Bob Lazar hid his Element 115? Buried in the garden. I'm going to say it's outside his garden or something.
I just garden. Have a little Jack Valet on my shoulder saying, that's aerogel.
Okay. I thought you would. Trent says, a new name and clear objectives is a start. Unless there are consequences for not giving up info to AARO, then it's a pretty picture that doesn't have a frame to hang on the wall. AARO should be a well-funded, diverse think tank. Hopefully, that's the proof is in the pudding with that one. Gaz says, in a nutshell, what will be different than it is now in 5 years' time? Then what do you guys hope will be in 5 years? 5 years is that time scale I think some people have latched on to now because of Lue's comment. But it's also a nice time scale of, in 5 years, what will change? We're almost 5 years on this December from the New York Times article, and that's a hell of a timeline to go back and cover, which no doubt we'll do in 4 or 5 months' time, Dan, because that's a big, big piece of work. But what do you hope from 5 years from now? Where are we going to be?
I would hope that in 5 years, and I'll even take bets on this for someone who wants to put some money down, because it would be kind of be fun, but not too much, just like 10 fine English pounds. I will bet someone that in 5 years, we won't call them UAP, we'll have an actual name for them and know their origin. That's what I would say.
Okay.
At the very least, by 2026, now there are allusions in the new legislation language that the programs are going to carry on past that. But the programs we're looking at, like AARO, like UAPTF, like AIMSG, they are funded until 2026. So in 5 years, we'll be past the end of that, and we'll have a kind of summary of, 4 or 5 years of study of the UAP phenomena. And we'll also have the results of what NASA are doing and what they're diving into. Also, we'll have a lot of what Project Galileo finds. So in 5 years, we're going to be looking at results. And like I say, we're probably going to have to look at a whole bunch of events that we hold on really tightly to at the moment and go, you know what? They did look into that in a robust manner and there was nothing there, Do
you know what I've been thinking to give my answer? And hopefully it doesn't frustrate many people, but something that I'm thinking is realistic, especially given the last few weeks, is I wonder in 5 years' time, have we got a combination of the James Webb Telescope has seen something at quite a distance that we can confirm, and scientists come out and confirm, we think we have found something somewhere that is intelligent life, be it a Dyson sphere or a planet that's inhabited or something like that, or a huge craft somewhere, but it's been so long ago that we don't even know if it's still there. And they basically say, but it's been so far away, so long ago, but we think we've found something out there in the universe. But to go hand in hand with that, the conversation here a bit closer to home is that we think there may be a chance that some of these things may or may not already have visited, or be visiting us, and we're looking into that and almost again keeping that drip going, but saying, actually we've found something really far away, and that gets the general public more ready for a conversation of, well, are they coming here? Well, we don't know. This thing's actually 13 billion light years away, so the actual distance is it's not there anymore. However, it just opens up people's minds a little bit to, oh, well, if something was there, why couldn't something now be here? And then that allows the conversation to change. So I wonder, and do you know what? I would take that in 5 years if we were at that point.
I'm going to dub your 5-year point the 3-body point, because there's a lot in what you just said that is very, very similar to the 3-body problem and that series in general. What worries me about a scenario like that is that if we start talking about, not being alone, but not knowing how close they are, that affects people in a really fundamental kind of way psychologically. Some people are going to be okay having them so close. And Tom alluded to it in his interview with Sivo, where if we can see them 13, million light years away, then that's far away. We don't need to worry about it. But if there's evidence that they're visiting here and we don't know what they're doing, that's a really scary conversation for some people. So I would hope that in 5 years, we would have a bit more of an answer in terms of intent as well.
Okay, interesting, but good question, Gaz. One for a longer show, I think, as well. Ricky says, do you guys feel like the formation of AARO will be more effective than its predecessor? I think you can have answered that, but Dan, just to sum up, we do, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Not perfect, but a good step forward. And next year we'll go through the same thing again with not perfect, but a good step forward. So yeah, onwards.
Yeah. Adam Goldsack, as we know, UAP Media UK colleague, optimistically cautious. This is a positive move, although how apt is OUSDI over another branch? And I've seen some people commenting saying it should have been housed somewhere else, but this is always going to be the thing that where is the perfect place to put something like this? There's always going to be some kind of issue with how a department is run or what they may be doing behind the scenes, or like imagine it was like the Department of Energy. Aha, there you go. It was them, and it's like, so it's got to be somewhere, and this is where
there is language as well in the legislation that proposes making a joint program office, which alludes to them maybe either this year or next year kind of pulling control of this office away from the DoD. So I think it's something that officials are aware of, but they're kind of letting them do their thing and kind of saying, okay, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, you want him in, you say that he's the best that you've got, cool, let's see what he does for a year. And then if by next year we're still in the same situation again, we'll probably see, it being pulled further and further away from the DoD control.
And Dan, I like to finish on a fair or cynical or point. I know you saw this one as well on Twitter. You interacted with Lynn. Lynn said it's another word for the same organization doing the same thing, but maybe I'm just being cynical. And it reminded me of the Scooby-Doo meme where they pull off the mask and it was that guy all along, or the old Vince McMahon, to use a wrestling one again. It was me, Austin. And is it going to be that meme where the arrow hood gets pulled off and it's the AOIMSG in a year's time going, haha, it was me all along?
But then we can keep going back, right? If we pull AIMSG's face off, then we get the UAPTF. If we pull that mask off, we get ATIP. We pull that mask off, we get OSAP. And then they're areas that people are a lot more comfortable with, right? We think Lue did a good job. We think they did a good job investigating Skinwalker Ranch and the high strangeness. So this stuff all kind of trickles down out of those things. But yeah, just more robust conversation now.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Dan, thank you very much for joining us for this one, especially ahead of your big move. I'm away this weekend in Glasgow for a day with my little boy. Looking forward to that. Coming up on Monday, Dan, is the Robin Hansen interview, which is out now on early access and ad-free. According to Dan, Dave Smethurst, and a few others, I didn't make an idiot of myself with Robin. Thank him very much for that conversation.
You did great. People are going to really enjoy it. It's a thoroughly entertaining and a bit of a different interview as well.
It was the most awkward, I think I said to you, Dan, I've felt since the Kurt Jaimungal interview I done with, and that was nothing against Kurt, that was just having someone who's far more intellectual than myself on, but trying to kind of break it down to terms I understood. But yeah, Robin was great. He said he'd be really happy to come back on in the future. He's got a book coming out down the line, which is quite some time away still. But you'll be speaking to him for Colouring Outside the Lines well before then anyway. But if folks want to listen to that early, you can check out any of the linktree.ee/UFO UAPAM or any of the kind of premium services to listen to it early. If not, you can check it out from Monday on all the audio feeds and from next Friday on the YouTube premium feeds as well. And don't forget, if you like watching the videos early, you can sign up to YouTube for a couple of bucks, couple of pounds, couple of euros, couple of pesos. I don't know if they even use those anymore.
Pesetas. Couple of thousand yen.
yeah, any of your local currency, like the price of a coffee, and it helps support the channel, all that kind of crap that creators like ourselves like to tell you. But if not, listen to it free, share it, like it, leave reviews, all of that kind of stuff is greatly appreciated, especially in a kind of cost of living crisis and all that jazz. But here we are talking about UFOs. Hopefully you've been informed, entertained, you've hated us both, but you've listened all the way through, so thank you very much. And Dan, speak to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for listening, and thank you for having me.
That's my line.
That is all for this week's show. Thank you very much for listening. Please remember to leave the podcast a review on your chosen platform. You can like, retweet and subscribe. That would all be very much appreciated. The shows are being uploaded onto YouTube as we speak more and more. You can sign up at patreon.com/That UFO podcast to access the shows ad-free as well. Please get in touch on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, That UFO podcast. Of course, on Twitter, it's at UFO UAPAM. And again, folks, as always, keep looking up. You never know what you might see.
It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer, more like a hubcap designed by Chaucer, a little baroque and quite steampunk, like Alice was playing bass for the Parliament of Folk. The little fucker hovered right outside of my window, and when I shoved out the screen, he made it an issue. I don't think he expected me to see his ass, but I'd had some champagne and smoked a little around. Meditative game of state full on meta. Can't imagine how it could have been any better. I got to the top of the stairs and there he was. Like, you awake? I was about to abduct you, cuz. I jumped back and nearly kissed myself, and I climbed out the window after the elf, and I woke up in my bed and there was something on my head and everything was weird and everything was red. And I called out to my boys, they thought this was noise, they thought it was a dream, they thought it was my toys, they thought it was my problems, and they think I should seek therapy, and I don't know what to do because it doesn't really scare me. If you really want to know who I think I be, I think it's you and me and us and we and him and her and that and she and that thing over there and what's that, Jake? But for being serious, open your mind, consider your heart, consider time, consider your space, consider your lies, consider your life, consider your eyes. It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer. It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer.